Here's my attempt at a rig rundown for what I use when I play all these Genesis parts for my tribute band, the Genesis Show. A little bit different than the performance videos you've seen because I'm using more MIDI controllers and things like that. So instead of being on a stage or in a rehearsal room, I just set this up in my living room, kind of like Richard Dreyfuss in Close Encounters of the Third Kind, where he builds Devil's Tower and his family leaves him. But I'm not in that dire straits. However, this is the area where you see me do my Hammond organ stuff, and my CP80 is right behind me. So a lot of people have asked me about this. Since I'm filming, I'm not going to be playing a lot. And I'll make this announcement right at the top. I'm coming very low volume out of a practice amp. So this is not about, oh, your phase shifter is not right. It's not, I'm not recording direct, and I'm not going through a front of house sound system. So this is just for educational purposes. So let's start with the digital stuff here. I have a brand new Mac Mini. It's got an M1 chip, which I was a little nervous about, but everything seems to be working great. So M1 Mac Mini with a cheapo monitor and wireless mouse and Magic Mouse and keyboard, and running main stage. Everything's the latest version. I just did some updates last night, and there's my set list. I am using the following for my piano sounds. The CP70 sounds I'm using from UVI, the library called EGP, Electric Grand Piano. Not the ones you saw in my previous video, but I bet they're pretty close. And I'm only using the built-in compressor in the UVI workstation effects section, not using chorus. That is being controlled by my trusty old Nord Stage 88 version 1. I was an early adopter. It's a fantastic keyboard, but I think the samples in my computer are better at the CP70. And I don't have enough room in my mixer, so it didn't make sense to run another hardware keyboard. And the output levels are a little low for my tastes. So I'm just using this as a glorified MIDI controller, which is the only 88 key keyboard I have. It's on like a tabletop stand, and I'm using an M-Audio sustain pedal in the back. It's running standard MIDI DIN to my interface, which I'll get into. So right now, that's the piano. The chorus I will explain. The other plugins I'm using the latest version of Native Instruments Contact, which is version 6. And like my videos, I'm using that strictly for the SynthMagic Quadra library, but only the polysynth section and the phase shifter. So when I do those brassy pad sounds for behind the lines, the distorted pad that layers with the lead for Abacab, the pads at the beginning of In the Cage and Duchess, those are all that sample library. Let me see if I can do the behind the lines for you. So I'm using Aftertouch to sweep the filter. That also is using an external chorus. In fact, everything coming out of this computer is going through an external chorus. So the phase shifter for things like Duchess and In the Cage. I think I have a volume pedal somewhere. Yeah. Okay, that phase shifter is the SynthMagic phase shifter. Somewhere in here. I don't know. I can't be my own cinematographer and demonstrate this too well. But needless to say, if you've watched my polysynth video, you'll figure that out. What else am I using this for? I'm using it for additional profit layers. I have a Prophet 6 for analog sounds that I use on most of the sounds, but for like an additional dodo layer, an additional no reply at all, a couple other things. I have UHE Repro 5, which runs really well on this new machine. Before it was a bit of a hog. This is been certified now to run on the M1 chips. So this works really well. However, I don't use it for my second layer of Man on the Corner because, or do I? Oh, I do. Yeah. Because it's not worth getting into. That uses the hold button, and the hold switch is on a real Prophet and the Arturia Prophet, but it's not on the UHE. But I found a way to get around that. But it's so boring, I'm not even going to talk about it anymore. So, so my second Prophet layer to do Prophet 10 stuff is the UHE Repro. It's really fantastic. And then oh yeah, and then for the stuff from the 1980 tour, like Follow You, Follow Me, and then our second set, which we're doing all like the versions. There's more songs there. I didn't have to make separate presets, like Dance on Volcano, Los Endos. But all of those I'm using, this is new to me, the IK Multimedia IK Multimedia Hammond B3X. So I'm using that, no effects. And then for my plug-in effects, I'm using what's also new to me, which is Amplitude 5, and never mind that Marshall, that's just the default. But I'm using the MXR Phase 100 model for all of my Hammond organ sounds from the 1980 stuff. And just that. And then I'm also using the Abacab Polysynth. I'm using the MXR Distortion Plus, which I think is really nice. That's hard to get, believe it or not. There's so many distortions, but I'm really glad I have that Amplitude now, because that is it's a very cool. This is kind of a unique distortion, I think, a little different than Rats and the Boss distortion and all that stuff. So anyway, that's all the computer stuff. Pretty boring. And then let's go over to my little pedal train setup. It's not even properly set up because the chorus is so damn big. But here, this is a really good piece that I got a couple years ago. Again, I was an early adopter. They have a rack mount version, which is probably a little cooler and more expensive. I'm trying to keep myself from buying it. But anyway, this is from Radial. It's called Key Largo. It's kind of set up like a foot switch, which is the goofiest part that I do not use. Obviously, it's on a table. But man, have you ever used hardware keyboards and a computer live, and you've got a mixer and an interface? I mean, it seems like a lot of mixers from the usual brands are coming out with USB audio interfaces, which is great. But this works very well with the Mac. So I've got 3 stereo inputs, well, stereo if you need them, and an effects send. And then here's my computer. So the Nord is so old that it doesn't have USB MIDI, so that's my standard MIDI DIN. And then in the back of the Mac Mini, I've got a hub for all my controllers. But then this goes to the other USB input in the Mac Mini, and I can get my computer in and out of here. I mean, the latency is non-existent as far as I can tell. This would normally go front of house, but right now I have it going to a headphone amp. And then I have a monitor mix, which is going to my keyboard amp. This is my rehearsal setup because we don't really rehearse with a full sound system. And then I've got 3 inputs here, which I'll go over in a second. And then in my effects end, this is the only vintage piece that I'm using live, which is my Boss CE1. And I'm currently running it in stereo, which this allows. I've got a Voodoo Labs Power, what was that, Pedal Power Plus back here, which currently is powering this with a 2-prong input and then this. So this is one of those Boss twin pedals. This is a clone of the Roland Space Echo. It's digital. It's pretty cool. My 2600 is running directly into that mono. And then I'll explain this when I do my vocoder setup. So let's go, let's do some analog stuff now. So here, so this is just like a tabletop stand with a piece of wood on it. And then I've got like one of these kind of 4-legged stands that this is on. For my left-hand keyboard, you know, Tony replaced the Mellotron, much to most of your horror, with a Roland VP330 Vocoder Plus, which also was a string synth and had something called human voice. So this was the Mellotron choir and 3 violin sound from 80 to 82. There's the choir. Now, since this has its own Roland style chorus built into it, I'm just running stereo out here. So that's in my 3rd channel. I'm not sending that to the chorus. I mean, I listen to live albums and the radio shows and board tapes, and it doesn't sound like this is. It gets really messy. You know, 2 choruses. It's almost like phase cancellation going on. So he had to have run this direct. And one thing I noticed about this machine is that what he had to have done, you know, Dance on a Volcano, Bridge, and then back. That's one of the hardest parts of the night, is switching these sounds for Dance on a Volcano. It's really hard. But human voice, the choir sound, if you put it up here and play some big chords with all the footages on, it distorts. It gets like, it gets too crunchy in some voicings. So I always have to kind of just by hand do it there. It's kind of like his portamento settings, you know. Oh, was it this or this? Well, it depended on the night because how fast he could get there. So anyway, I was talking to a bandmate about like, why was Dodo on the Mama Tour have less portamento? There's like the rehearsal video from the Mama Tour, if you've ever seen it, the sound stage. I'm like, he probably didn't get to it in time. You know, it's not an intentional thing. It's just wherever these ends up. Same with drawbars. I don't think there's a definitive drawbar guide to Tony Banks. I mean, he just whatever he could grab. But the strings, you can go all the way up. So I think these are, I don't hate this compared to the Mellotron. I love these sounds equally. They're just really cool. All right, so the one trick I do have to remember, because it's one less octave, I have to change the transposition while I play. That's really the only tricky thing. Now, the vocoding, which was done on the albums a lot. And you hear this thing all over Duke and Abacab. But live, it was really only used for Duchess. And because it was all the way over here on either the 80 or 81 tour, he actually ran his Prophet into the external synth in here. And then the microphone, which was over the piano, was him doing all the vocalizations for Duchess while he was doing very Liberace style octaves on the piano. So on the 80 tour, the Prophet was up here. On the 81 tour, the Prophet 10 was here. So this is where he was playing it. It wasn't really because of any particular sound. It was just a convenience. I mean, the pad on this maybe had a little more decay. So you have to play more legato if you're doing it directly on the vocoder. Like I did in my video. I just didn't feel like getting into it. I thought when I made that Duchess video, you guys would want to see the instrument, and it just was easier for me to get a better camera angle. So There's a dog toy. So that's the gamut of the profit use. Now I will try to set it up just so you kind of see what's happening here. Duchess, I think I'm doing this sound. Okay, so how do I do this? So I've got the profit going into this radial piece here, the Big Shot ABY. Profit in is going there, and then there's two outputs. Output A is going to input 2. I'm running my Profit 6 mono, but it's getting the stereo chorus. Then when I have to, so when Behind the Lines is over, the drum machine stops and I fade out the piano, I reach over here and I go boom, B. So when I play my Profit keyboard, there's nothing going on there. And then I have to get my SM58. I have one with a switch on it. And then this is going to be weird. You're going to hear me going, wah, wah. Wah, 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 wah. Okay, so that's my setup. And it's not a special sound at all, right? It's just to get that Duchess sound. So then when Duchess is over, before I go into Me and Sarah Jane for this set, I have to little note in my iPad to tell me to do that again. Okay, so that's a lot of money to play Duchess live. This, a microphone, an AB box, a Profit. I mean, spare no expense, right? So, okay, so now we're moving on to this setup, and I'll go to the next analog piece, which you've seen in my videos, my Profit 6 desktop. What an amazing synth. I mean, in my money, the best polysynth out there, even though I don't own too much other. I was happy to get this for Genesis show, but and I can get all the Profit 5 and 10 sounds, all of them. It's not multi-timbral like the new update of the Profit 10, but I'm not spending $4,000 for the luxury of playing Man on the Corner. So I use the computer to do the second layers. But this is fantastic. The stereo voices alone is very cool for studio work, which I've used it quite a bit in the last couple of years. So another great thing about this instrument, I wish all analog synths had it. This has separate expression pedal inputs for volume and low pass filter. So most of the Abacab era stuff on the Profit 10, he had an expression pedal for the low pass filter sweeps. You hear it in Dodo. You hear it in Me and Sarah Jane. No Reply at All, Man on the Corner. They all have that. So this is a good investment for live, just because you can really do all that stuff. I mean, I already have enough pedals set up. It's a bit maddening. So this pedal is for low pass filter going directly into the back of the Profit. This is for volume. That foot switch is going directly into the back of the Profit for things like the end of Squonk, the 1980 version. This is a stereo volume pedal for the vocoder. I tried to get away with not doing it, but you need it for Afterglow. And then this is one of my Bluetooth page turners. I have another one over here. This volume pedal, expression pedal, is going directly into the back of this top controller. So this here is a contraption. 2 crappy MIDI controllers, 61 key, stacked on top of each other in a wooden case that I designed and my next door neighbor, who is a woodworking hobbyist, put together for me. And don't ask, he said he's only making one. He does this stuff for fun. He already has another couple jobs. So he was really cool and did this for me. So I have Wurlitzer legs, reissue Wurlitzer legs that I gotten for my Wurlitzer years ago. I have another set, so I didn't need them. And then Wurlitzer plates from Vintage Vibe. And then this is an old M Audio Key Station 61 ES, I think. And then there's holes sunken into the wood that the feet of this go into so it doesn't slide around. And then the front rubber feet of the Novation 61, what is it? Novation Impulse 61. The front feet sit on that, and then the back feet also sit in little divots on a back rail. So from behind, the audience sees wood, and then they see the back of the Novation. And then there's a hole that the USB cable for this keyboard goes into. So this is USB MIDI. This is USB MIDI, both to the hub for the Mac Mini, and then also MIDI DIN out to the Prophet in. What does this let me do? It lets me play a real Prophet here. It lets me play a digital plug-in Prophet here and here. I can use the volume pedal, that one, for either of these, and that one for the real Prophet. Then when I do my Hammond sounds, I use the multi-timbral mode when you're setting up a channel in main stage. And I can use the Hammond B3X or any other organ plugin. And I can do top manual there, lower manual there. I could split this and do like bass pedals there, which I don't have to do for these songs. I'm using this for Follow You, Follow Me, Squonk, Dance on a Volcano, Los Endos, Back in New York City. I Know What I Like, The Knife. So I'm doing traditional Tony Banks 2 manual stuff here. In my opinion, if you're going to do these parts justice, you need 2 manuals. And this is better. This is not as cool as a Hammond. They're still a little farther apart, but they're closer than like a keyboard here and another keyboard here like I have this. Okay, so this is a very good compromise for me for my organ parts for Tony Banks. I've got an X stand and a piece of wood, right? So here is, you've seen my other video where I do the 2600. This is the Behringer Gray Mini. I love it. It's really cool. And as you can see, I really only have 4 patch cables. I'm unplugging this one a lot. You'll watch the other video. I'm not using the reverb, the spring reverb. I'm going directly to a volume pedal, mono, and then that volume pedal is going to the Space Echo and going into channel 1 there. So I'm doing all of the quadra leads with this. And if you saw my video, I'm not using MIDI DIN. I've got a USB cable going to the computer hub. And then my controller that I'm using for it, the Arturia Keylab 61 Mark II, black, I'm doing USB. And I'll show you how I did this. It's kind of cool. Before, I would need like a volume pedal to turn off the 2600 when I didn't need it. But now, the songs in which I use it, so Turn It On Again, opener of the album, it doesn't have anything for the 2600. Then I go to Dodo, and you'll see a channel appear, which is an external MIDI channel. And that is, I select 2600 there. I've got a modifier MIDI plugin to do the pitch bends. And then now it is available. One-handed. So if I need just that sound, it's there. Now, if I go to ABCAB next, I've got that. Excuse me, I'm going to try to talk and do my ABCAB sound at the same time. I do my changes in the guitar solo of ABCAB. Do-do-do. And let's see if I have this sound. Yeah. So, I put this in duo mode, and my upper voice is going to the first VCO, and now I've got VCO 1 and 2 up. That's the red and the blue. And then I turn the portamento up. And then I've got this. So this is a pretty good, this is a really good way to demonstrate all the things that I have to do live. So now, by the time I come in with ABCAB, I've got The contact, oh, by the way, I just ported my old Mac setup into this when I got this Mac Mini, and Contact 5 was crashing all of this. Contact 5 isn't Big Sur ready. So I got the update when it was on sale this summer for Contact 6, or the complete update, and it works fine. So the only M1 new computer trouble I had was just being lazy and not updating Contact 5 to 6. So here's Contact 6, Quadra Polysynth samples, MXR Distortion Plus clone, and the Amplitube, and then that is coming out of into the chorus. So the poly section of the Quadra went through chorus. The lead section did not. So so I've got my Prophet organ. That's getting the stereo chorus. And then I've got, and that is the distorted, I'll turn the volume down on my 2600. So that's just the polysynth. You're hearing Quadra samples, model Distortion Plus, and real Boss chorus. And then I bring in the Duophonic 2600. Matching these levels is a little tricky. And you get the portamento and the thick analog. I probably have too much delay on this for your tastes. It sounds fine in the rehearsal room, okay? So not all of this is meant to be heard under a microscope, but I just leave this on a generic delay just to help everything up, help everything sound pretty good. So that is the rig. I mean, I don't know what else gets added to this in this era except the 12-string for the 1982 Supper's Ready, which we're not doing, so I don't have to worry about it. I would probably I have another radial direct box, and I just send that to the front of house. It doesn't have to go through a Leslie sound like it did in 76 and earlier, so I don't have to worry about effects for that. But yeah, this takes a long time to set up. And I bet a lot of you, if you're still with me, you're like, man, this is too much. And it is, frankly. But to be honest, I owned this, that, and that, before I joined the band. And, I just kind of started building things around it, and it's changed a lot. But I've always wanted one of those. I've always wanted one of those. Always wanted one of those. Always, so it kind of gave me, I use these in the studio too, which is great. And then just to kind of show you my microphone setup, this is just for Duchess. I do not sing backing vocals. If you can hear my Barry White-esque voice, Tony was a tenor, I am a baritone. So luckily our guitar player and drummer have tenor voices and they cover all the backing vocals well. I'm thankful to not have to sing in this gig. Just one more thing off my plate. But yeah, I read off of an iPad. Who cares, right? I know a lot of people are annoyed by that, but frankly, when I'm doing I'm also learning the songs for next year and the year after that. I'm always doing my music director job, learning everyone's guitar parts, charting everyone's guitar parts and bass parts and keyboard parts. So the time that many people might spend playing this stuff over and over, I've got other gigs, I've got other jobs. I'm just learning new music all the time. So I read it so I don't forget it for the audiences. So there's an old iPad running 4-score. This iPad is so old it can't even be updated, but it gets me my sheet music, and then I've got 2 air turn wherever my available foot is to turn the pages with Bluetooth page turner. And some things I've memorized, like the In the Cage solo, Dodo when I'm doing that clavinet type part. Some difficult things that I just can't look at music, but if I can get away with reading it, just to remember where the chord inversions are, or which seventh comes into which chord, There's no way I could memorize it. So that's my excuse. Yeah. So that was a half hour. My God. Hope you enjoyed it. And some of you may never ever want to use this much stuff. You know, I mean, if you can use a workstation, be my guest. I've done musicals many times and I hate them because it's a different sound every 8 measures. And if you miss that program change pedal, you're playing in an inappropriate song at a wrong time. I'd rather just play a wrong note on the right keyboard than do some elaborate aerobics. It's not very musical. So this is ergonomically what he did. The only thing that's different is I sit lower. This is the CP80 piano height, and I just make that. And I sit on a drum stool. If you watch Tony Banks, who's much taller than me, he kind of plays like this. So I'm lower. The audience may not see all of me over the 2600. I sit more comfortably this way. But when you're doing the cinema show solo and you've got to do the lead here and the choir there, my goodness. I hope I can do that for as long as I have to do it. It's physically very difficult. All right, guys. See you soon.